Why does one small comment, one careless look, or one unexpected moment have the power to flip your mood instantly and steal your peace? You've felt it. That sudden heat in your chest, the tight jaw, the racing thoughts. Anger shows up fast. It feels strong. It feels justified. It feels like protection. In that moment, it convinces you that reacting is necessary, that holding on is right, that letting go would mean losing something important: respect, control, dignity. But here's the truth most people never stop to face. Anger feels powerful, but it is not power. It is a signal. And most of the time, it's misunderstood. You were never taught how anger actually works. You were taught to suppress or explode with it, nothing in between. So your mind learned to treat anger like armor, something you wear to feel safe, something you use to defend yourself when you feel ignored, disrespected, or unseen. That's why it feels automatic. That's why it feels personal. But anger is not who you are. It's something your brain learned to use a long time ago. Anger is born from expectation, from the silent belief that people should act a certain way, speak a certain way, treat you a certain way. When reality breaks that expectation, your nervous system reacts before your logic can even step in. Not because you're weak, but because your brain is wired to protect your identity and your sense of worth. It's fast, it's emotional, and it doesn't ask for permission. The problem is this: when you don't understand anger, it feels like it owns you. It feels like other people control your emotions, like they hold the remote to your peace. And the longer that pattern continues, the more normal it feels to live on edge, to replay conversations in your head, to feel tense even when nothing is happening, to carry irritation like background noise in your life. Here's the shift that changes everything. Anger is not a command, it's information. It's your inner world asking for attention, not obedience. And the moment you see that, the moment you stop identifying with it, something powerful begins to happen. You stop fighting yourself. You stop judging your emotions. You start understanding them. This is not about becoming passive. This is not about pretending things don't hurt. This is about reclaiming authority over your inner state, because the strongest people are not the loudest. They are the calmest under pressure. They are the ones who can feel anger rise and choose not to let it decide their behavior. If you stay with this message, you'll begin to see anger differently, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. You'll learn why it shows up, what it's really protecting, and how to loosen its grip without force. You'll discover how peace doesn't come from controlling others, but from understanding yourself. And when that understanding clicks, anger loses its power over you. Stay here. Because what comes next is not about managing anger for a moment. It's about breaking the cycle entirely and stepping into a level of calm that no one can take from you. Once you begin to see anger as information instead of identity, another truth starts to surface, and it can feel uncomfortable at first. No one outside of you actually creates your anger. They don't place it inside you. They don't manufacture it. They activate it. That distinction changes everything, because activation only happens when something already exists beneath the surface. Think about it. The same words spoken by one person can feel harmless, while spoken by another, they ignite rage. The situation is similar, but the reaction is not. That's because the trigger is not the moment. It's the meaning your mind attaches to it. Anger rises when something touches a sensitive place inside you, a place shaped by past disappointment, unmet needs, ignored boundaries, or silent pressure you've been carrying for far too long. Your mind is constantly scanning for threats to your sense of worth. Disrespect, rejection, being dismissed, being overlooked. When it senses one, even subtly, it reacts fast, faster than logic, faster than reason. This reaction is not a flaw. It's conditioning. Your nervous system learned over time that certain signals mean danger. So it responds automatically, trying to protect you from emotional pain. But protection becomes a problem when it turns into a pattern. When every small irritation feels like proof that something is wrong with others or with you. When anger becomes your default response, not because the world is always attacking you, but because your inner world is already under pressure. That pressure doesn't come from the present moment alone. It comes from accumulation, from holding things in, from swallowing words, from tolerating situations that quietly drain you. This is why blaming people never works. It feels good for a moment, but it gives your power away. The moment you believe others control your emotions, you surrender your ability to change them. You wait for the world to behave differently so you can finally feel calm. And that day never comes because people are unpredictable. Situations are messy. Expectations are constantly broken. Real freedom begins when you take responsibility without self-attack. When you say, something in me is reacting, and I want to understand it. That shift alone reduces the intensity. Awareness slows the reaction. Curiosity softens the edge. You stop fighting the emotion and start listening to what it's pointing toward. Often, anger is grief that was never expressed, fear that was never acknowledged, exhaustion that was never respected. It's the body saying, I'm carrying too much. It's the mind saying, I need safety. When you ignore those signals, anger gets louder. When you meet them with awareness, anger starts to relax. This is where strength is built. Not by suppressing the reaction, but by recognizing the source. Not by judging yourself, but by understanding your patterns. When you do that, something subtle but profound happens. The same triggers lose their grip. The same words don't land as deeply. The same situations no longer feel like personal attacks. You begin to realize that calm is not something you wait for. It's something you create by knowing yourself. And once you see that, once you feel that shift even slightly, you'll never see anger the same way again. Because now, instead of being controlled by every trigger, you are learning how to stand steady within yourself. And as you start standing steady within yourself, another realization quietly settles in, one that most people avoid because it demands honesty. Anger is not harmless. It doesn't just pass through and disappear. It leaves residue. It shapes how you see the world, how you speak, how you breathe, how you carry yourself when no one is watching. Every time anger takes control, it trains your nervous system to stay alert, tense, ready to fight. Your body doesn't know the difference between a real threat and an emotional one. It reacts the same way. Muscles tighten. Breathing shortens. Thoughts narrow. Over time, this becomes your baseline. Not peace, not calm, but tension disguised as strength. You may not even notice it anymore. The irritation feels normal. The impatience feels justified. The inner commentary feels reasonable. But beneath it, something else is happening. Your energy is leaking. Your focus is scattered. Your presence is divided between the moment in front of you and the argument, replaying in your mind. Anger keeps you mentally occupied with what already happened, while life keeps moving forward without you. This is the quiet cost no one warns you about. Anger steals clarity. It clouds judgment. It pushes you to speak when silence would protect you, and to react when restraint would serve you better. It convinces you that winning an argument is more important than preserving your peace. And every time you choose anger, you reinforce the habit of losing yourself for a moment that will never matter tomorrow. Anger also distorts connection. It builds invisible walls. Even when you're not speaking, people can feel it. The tension, the guardedness, the edge. And slowly, relationships shift. Not always dramatically, sometimes subtly. Conversations shorten. Distance grows. Misunderstanding becomes common, not because you are wrong, but because anger doesn't invite understanding. It demands defense. What makes this even heavier is that anger rarely punishes the person you believe deserves it. It punishes you. It follows you into quiet moments. It lingers long after the situation ends. It keeps your body awake at night and your mind restless during the day. And the longer you carry it, the more it becomes part of your identity. You start saying, this is just how I am, when in truth it's just what you've been holding. But here is the turning point. Awareness breaks the cycle. When you begin to see the true cost of anger, not intellectually, but emotionally, something shifts. You stop romanticizing it. You stop justifying it. You stop protecting it. You see it for what it really is, a heavy burden you no longer want to carry. This realization doesn't come with shame. It comes with clarity. You begin to ask a different question. Not who made me angry, but what did this reaction take from me? My energy, my time, my peace. And suddenly, holding on doesn't feel powerful anymore. It feels expensive. That's when a deeper desire emerges. Not to control others, not to prove a point, but to protect your inner world. To move through life without being emotionally hijacked by every inconvenience, every comment, every unmet expectation. You start wanting calm not because it looks good, but because it feels right. And when that desire becomes stronger than the need to react, you are no longer trapped. You are ready to step into a different way of living. One where your peace matters more than being right. One where your energy is directed forward, not burned on what no longer deserves it. When you reach that point, when you truly want peace more than you want to react, a quiet but powerful shift begins inside you. You start to notice the space between what happens and how you respond. That space has always been there, but anger made it invisible. Now, for the first time, you can feel it. And inside that space lives your freedom. This is where control is reclaimed, not control over people, not control over outcomes. Control over yourself. You realize that reacting instantly is not strength. It is habit. Real strength is the ability to pause, to breathe, to let the first wave pass without acting on it. That pause may only last a few seconds, but it changes everything. It interrupts the old pattern. It gives your mind time to catch up with your emotions. In that pause, you begin to see clearly. You see that not every thought deserves your belief. Not every feeling deserves your action. Anger may rise, but it doesn't get to drive. You do. And the more often you practice this, the more familiar it becomes. Calm stops feeling unnatural. It starts feeling like home. This is not about suppressing emotion. Suppression creates pressure, and pressure eventually explodes. This is about allowing the emotion to exist without letting it rule you. You let the feeling move through you like a wave instead of becoming the ocean. You observe it. You name it. You feel it in your body without turning it into a story about who is wrong or who needs to be punished. As you do this, something unexpected happens. The intensity drops faster. What once lasted hours now lasts minutes. What once ruined your day now barely touches it. You begin to realize that anger feeds on attention. The less you argue with it, the less fuel it has. Awareness starves it. Presence dissolves it. This is where emotional mastery is built. Quietly, privately. In moments no one applauds. When you choose not to send the message. When you choose not to respond immediately. When you choose silence over explanation. These moments shape you. They strengthen your nervous system. They teach your mind that safety does not depend on reacting. With time, people start to feel the difference around you. Your presence becomes steadier. Your words carry more weight because they are not driven by impulse. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You don't need to prove yourself to feel secure. Calm gives you authority without effort. And the most powerful part is this. When you stop reacting, you stop giving away your energy. You no longer hand control to whoever triggers you. Their behavior stays theirs. Your inner state stays yours. That boundary is invisible, but it is unbreakable when you protect it. You begin to move through life differently. Situations that once drained you no longer have access. Comments that once hooked you now pass through without landing. Not because you don't care, but because you care enough about yourself to choose peace. This is the moment many people mistake calm for weakness. But you know better now. You know that calm is not passive. It is intentional. It is chosen again and again. And every time you choose it, you reinforce a new identity. Someone who is not easily shaken. Someone who does not need chaos to feel alive. Someone who is rooted, centered, and self-directed. And once you taste that level of inner control, once you feel how light life becomes without constant reaction, Going back no longer feels possible because you've seen what's available to you. A life where your peace is not negotiable. A life where your emotions work for you, not against you. And as this calm begins to feel familiar, you start to understand that it isn't something you wait for, it's something you practice. Inner peace is built through small, deliberate habits that quietly reshape how your mind responds to the world. Not dramatic changes, not forced positivity. Simple, grounded choices repeated until they become instinct. It starts with slowing the moment down. Anger rushes you. It creates urgency. It tells you to act now, speak now, defend now. The habit that dissolves this is the pause. A breath taken before a word. A second of stillness before a response. That pause interrupts the emotional surge and brings your thinking brain back online. You're not avoiding the situation. You're giving yourself time to choose wisely instead of reacting blindly. Then comes observation. Instead of arguing with your thoughts, you watch them. You notice the narrative forming, the assumptions, the judgments. You don't push them away. You don't follow them either. You simply see them for what they are. Mental activity, not truth. This habit creates distance, and distance creates control. Another habit grows quietly alongside this, letting emotions be felt in the body without turning them into action. Tightness in the chest, heat in the face, pressure in the jaw. These sensations are uncomfortable, but they are temporary. When you stop resisting them, they pass faster. When you fight them, they intensify. Allowing the sensation without reacting teaches your nervous system that discomfort is survivable, that safety doesn't depend on aggression. Consistency is what makes this powerful, not perfection. Some days you'll react, some moments will slip through. That doesn't erase progress. Every time you notice after the fact, you're still training awareness. Every time you recover faster than before, you're building resilience. Calm is not fragile. It strengthens with use. Another inner habit that changes everything is releasing the need to be understood immediately. Anger often comes from feeling unheard. But explaining yourself in the heat of emotion rarely brings clarity. Silence, when chosen intentionally, preserves your dignity. It allows you to speak later from steadiness instead of frustration. When your words come from calm, they land deeper. You also begin to protect your energy proactively. You notice patterns, certain topics, certain people, certain environments. You don't need to cut everything off. You adjust exposure. You stop over-engaging where nothing productive comes from it. This is not avoidance, it's wisdom. You stop pouring emotional energy into places that don't nourish you. Over time, these habits compound. The mind becomes less reactive. The body relaxes faster. The space between trigger and response grows wider. What once felt impossible now feels natural. You don't need to convince yourself to stay calm. Calm emerges on its own because you've trained the system that it's safe to stay there. This is where confidence deepens. Not loud confidence, quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need validation. You trust yourself to handle situations without losing yourself. You trust your restraint more than your impulse. And that trust creates stability. Anger begins to feel unnecessary, not because you're numb, but because you're regulated. You're present. You're anchored. You don't need emotional explosions to feel alive. You don't need reaction to feel powerful. And as these habits settle in, something remarkable happens. Peace stops being something you chase. It becomes the ground you stand on, a steady foundation that holds you no matter what unfolds around you. Standing on that steady ground, you begin to understand a truth that changes how you move through every interaction. Letting go of anger does not mean letting people walk over you. Calm does not mean silence born from fear. Detachment is not withdrawal. Detachment is clarity. It is the ability to stay rooted in yourself while engaging the world without losing your center. Most people cling to anger because they believe it's the only thing that protects them. They think if they soften, they will be taken advantage of. If they don't react, they will be ignored. If they don't fight back emotionally, they will lose respect. But anger is not protection. Boundaries are. And boundaries don't require heat. They require certainty. When you are detached in a healthy way, you don't numb yourself. You stay present. You listen. You respond when needed, but you no longer absorb what isn't yours to carry. You recognize that other people's behavior often has more to do with their inner world than with your worth. That understanding creates emotional space, and in that space, resentment can't survive. Detachment allows you to say no without guilt, to step back without drama, to speak firmly without aggression. You stop explaining yourself to people who aren't listening. You stop seeking validation from those who can't give it, not because you're bitter, but because you're clear. Clarity removes the need to convince. This is where self-respect becomes visible, not through loud declarations, but through consistency. You don't argue to prove your value. You don't chase closure. You don't linger where you feel diminished. You act in alignment with your standards, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. Detachment also frees you from emotional contamination. You no longer carry the mood of the room home with you. You don't replay someone else's negativity in your head. You don't internalize disrespect as a personal failure. You observe, decide, and move forward. That is strength without hardness. There will be moments when people misinterpret your calm. They may call it cold. They may expect a reaction and feel unsettled when it doesn't come. Let them. You are not responsible for managing their expectations of your emotional availability. You are responsible for protecting your inner world. This way of being creates a powerful shift in how others relate to you, not because you demand it, but because your energy changes. You're no longer reactive. You're no longer predictable. You're grounded. And grounded people naturally command respect, not through fear, but through presence. Detachment teaches you that you can care without clinging. You can engage without entangling. You can love without losing yourself. And that balance is rare. It's what allows you to stay open without being wounded by every sharp edge in the world. As this settles in, anger feels less tempting. You don't need it to feel safe. You don't need it to feel strong. You've discovered something more stable, a calm that doesn't depend on circumstances, a confidence that doesn't rise and fall with other people's moods. You begin to move with intention. You choose your responses. You choose your battles. You choose where your energy goes. And each choice reinforces the same message within you. I am responsible for my inner state. I am allowed to protect it. This is not withdrawal from life. It is deeper engagement on your end terms. And once you experience that level of emotional independence, bitterness has no place to grow. Because you are no longer fighting the world. You are standing firmly within yourself. And when you live from that place, something profound settles into your identity. Being unbothered is no longer a technique you use. It becomes the way you exist. You wake up lighter. You move slower, not from laziness, but from certainty. You are no longer rushing to defend yourself because you are no longer doubting your worth. Life doesn't suddenly become perfect. People still disappoint. Situations still test you. Words still land awkwardly. But they no longer penetrate the core of who you are. They touch the surface and fall away. You don't carry them into the next hour, the next conversation, the next day. You let moments end where they belong. This is the quiet freedom most people never reach, not because it's unreachable, but because it requires inner responsibility. It asks you to stop outsourcing your peace, to stop waiting for apologies, understanding, or ideal behavior from others. You realize that calm is not a reward for good circumstances. It is a decision made regardless of them. As this way of living deepens, your inner dialogue changes. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "How do I want to respond?" That question alone puts you back in control. You stop reacting from old wounds and start acting from present awareness. The past loosens its grip. The future stops feeling threatening. You are here, and you are steady. Being unbothered doesn't make you distant. It makes you discerning. You choose when to engage and when to step back. You listen more. You speak less, but with greater intention. Your words carry weight because they are not charged with emotion. They come from clarity, and clarity is persuasive without effort. You begin to Notice how much energy you once wasted. How many hours were lost to replaying moments, holding grudges, preparing arguments that never needed to be spoken. That energy returns to you now. You use it to build, to create, to rest, to grow. Your life expands not because the world changed, but because you did. This state of calm becomes self-reinforcing. The more you protect it, the stronger it gets. The stronger it gets, the less anyone can disturb it. You stop seeing peace as fragile. You realize it is resilient. It bends, but it does not break. And when challenges come, you meet them grounded instead of reactive. There is a quiet confidence that emerges here, not the kind that needs attention, the kind that feels solid even in silence. You trust yourself. You trust your ability to navigate discomfort without losing yourself. You trust that no moment has the power to define you unless you give it permission. And perhaps the most important shift of all happens here. You stop fearing your emotions. You know anger may still visit, but it no longer stays. It no longer rules. It passes through like weather. You acknowledge it. You learn from it. And then you release it. This is what emotional freedom looks like. Not a life without challenges, but a life where challenges don't own you, where your inner world remains protected no matter what unfolds outside. You don't need to announce this transformation. You don't need to prove it. It will be felt in your presence, in your stillness, in the way nothing easily shakes you anymore. And once you live this way, once peace becomes your default, the question is no longer how to avoid anger. The question becomes why you would ever give your power away again. That question settles quietly, and with it comes a final understanding that reshapes everything. Peace is not something you achieve once and keep forever without effort. It is something you choose again and again, in small moments where no one is watching. And those choices, repeated daily, become the foundation of a life that cannot be easily disturbed. You begin to recognize the early signs now, the tightening in your body, the familiar rush, the urge to react. And instead of being pulled by it, you meet it with awareness. You remind yourself that nothing outside of you is worth the cost of your inner stability. No comment, no delay, no misunderstanding. Nothing deserves that price. This is where discipline replaces struggle. Not rigid discipline, but quiet commitment. A commitment to respond with intention. A commitment to protect your inner space the way you would protect something sacred, because it is. Your peace is the source of your clarity, your strength, your ability to love and lead and grow. You stop negotiating with anger. You don't argue with it or shame yourself for feeling it. You acknowledge it and choose differently. Over time, this choice becomes natural. The gap between trigger and response widens so much that reaction no longer feels urgent. You feel grounded enough to wait, calm enough to decide, strong enough to walk away when needed. This way of living changes how you see the world. You no longer see every challenge as a threat. You see it as information. You no longer take everything personally. You understand that people act from their own pain, their own fear, their own conditioning. That understanding doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it frees you from carrying it. You also begin to live with more purpose. When anger no longer drains you, energy returns. You invest it where it matters, in your growth, in your health, in your goals, in meaningful connection. Life feels fuller, not because it's louder, but because it's clearer. There will still be moments of difficulty. That's part of being human. Now you meet them anchored. You don't collapse inward. You don't explode outward. You stay centered. And that center becomes your home base no matter where you are or what you face. This is the kind of calm that changes lives quietly. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't seek approval. It simply exists, steady and reliable. And people feel it. They trust it. They respect it. More importantly, you trust it. You realize that being unbothered is not about avoiding emotion. It's about mastering it. It's about choosing peace. Not because the world is gentle, but because you are strong enough to remain gentle anyway. And that strength is available to you every day, in every breath you take before reacting, in every moment you choose understanding over impulse, in every decision to protect your inner world. This is not a finish line. It's a way of walking through life, Calm, clear, unshaken, rooted in something deeper than circumstance. And once you commit to living this way, once peace becomes your standard, not your exception, you no longer ask how to stop feeling angry or bothered. You simply live as someone who knows their power, guards their peace, and refuses to give either away.